Hello, dear students. I welcome you to our pre-recorded lecture on research strategy or methods. So far in this course unit, we have looked at several things on research methods or research in general. We have had a general introduction on research. We've had some discussions on an article that I uploaded, multitasking. And through that time, we looked at things like identification of a research problem and some research methods. We looked at some generic terms in research that we shall find here and there, things like phenomena, things like research approach, research types. And we went ahead to discuss certain things, especially on different types of research like qualitative versus quantitative research, descriptive versus analytical research. All these are simply generic things that we are looking at. And here we have another basic concept of research that we need to discuss, that is research strategy or method. As we discussed last week, we have an onion where research is concerned. If you can just refer yourself back to that lecture, where we saw different steps we go through, where we select our research philosophy, we come to the research approach, then we move on to the research method. So we've looked at our research philosophies and research approaches, so we're going to look at the method. The method is very much tied to your research approach, as we shall see as we discuss. So we hope to understand the significance of a research method as we go through this. I will try my level best to discuss some of these things in detail and also keep posing questions as we go through so that you yourselves don't depend on this video alone and what I'm saying, but go ahead and read more. We want to differentiate between research methods and then also relate our research methods to our research approach. Okay, so we have seen what research approach is. We also want to differentiate between research methods and research tools. Many times I see through my experience, I've seen students mistaking the difference between these two, the difference between a research method and a research tool. So these are the research methods we are going to run through. Two of them, specifically design science and action design research, are specific to IT and ICT and computer science. As long as you're building an artifact, that is a system, a program, an application, whatever it is, any kind of IT solution, you definitely it should appear that you're using these two research methods. Another method that is quite common with us in research, in special computer science, is case study, but it's not necessarily tied to computer science or IT. So let's go through them one by one. We start with experiment or experimental research. Now, we already have seen this in one article. Okay, we have seen this. If all of you remember the multitasking article we looked at, they were using experimental laboratory research. Okay, so this type of research involves selecting samples from a general population and placing them in a certain experimental condition, experimental environment. And then go ahead and you begin to study specific variables concerning these sample individuals that you have selected. Let me take you back to the article we read on multitasking. That particular article selected some respondents, put them in a lab experiment. They were seated in a chair, which was maybe caused to vibrate or give some kind of sensation. They were either listening to music or doing something that they were enjoying. And while they were doing that, sensors were placed on their heads, so to determine if they were feeling some kind of pleasure from listening to music and doing some relaxation activity. Okay, so that is typical experimental research. That is an example I've given you in the field of IS or ICT or IT. In other cases, we've seen experimental research, especially being done in the field of biology. Let us imagine the researchers who were looking for a vaccine for COVID-19. You'd imagine them in an experimental lab where they have samples of COVID, and they get different samples of COVID and apply different vaccines to them, and then they see the effect that these vaccines would have on the virus, or anyone looking for a cure for COVID-19 or HIV, the HIV virus for that matter. Anything in that relationship, you'd imagine they'd put them, that is the kind of idea that we have. Now, in research, what we normally do in experimental research, there is what we call, we create two groups of people. We have the group which is called the experimental group, and then we have the control group. So the experimental group is the one that where you apply the variables that you wish to test to find out if they actually have an effect on somebody. So take the example of the multitasking group. You'd have one group of people whom you apply to those applications on smartphones that give you the hedonic experience. By now, all of you know what that term means, hedonic. You apply it to them, and then you examine their brain activity, and also then you ask those participants to record how they feel. Then you can't get another group that we call the control group, where you don't apply those hedonic experiences. Maybe you give them a task which doesn't give an hedonic experience, for example, uh, carrying out a task like entering data in an Excel sheet. That is an experience that is something most likely that may not give you any kind of pleasurable experience. So that would be your control group, so that you determine once and for all the effect one variable will have on an individual, as opposed to somebody where it is not, that particular thing is not applied. So those are the two things. I would also urge you to go ahead and read about the experimental laboratory research. Find some articles on it. We shall have a discussion on that, and I'm going to ask you look for more articles, and then we'll have a discussion on Moodle, which I will grade depending on who has found some more information on that. So here on our slide, we have an example of an experiment on if monetary value can give motivation to people completing puzzles. So you'd have one group, an experimental group, where you pay them a certain amount of money, and another you don't pay them anything, and you see how quickly they solve the solution, just to determine if a reward, it can be a motivating factor for somebody carrying out a particular task. So go ahead and read about experimental laboratory research. We have seen that it can be used in ICT, in IT research. I have not yet seen it being used, but I know it can be used. So you can always think about it in terms of your research. We come to the second method, which is case study. Case study is a very popular research method. And in particular, we see it when a researcher wishes to examine a phenomena in real life context. Now, we already know what the term phenomena is. We've discussed this before. We want you as a researcher, you want to examine a certain phenomena, discover a certain situation, or answer a question in a real life context. So we have had discussions like this before, especially in IT. Imagine as a researcher, you wish to design a system. Let me give the example we have used in class before. You want to design a system that is going to improve access to student records. So you go ahead and design the system. You test out your system in your laboratory. You determine that it's functional, all its functions work, and it can grab any errors that may happen properly and report them. Then you said, okay, let me place it in a real life context within a case study. So you find a school or a number of schools, maybe 2 or 3 schools, and you say, I'm going to put them apply this system there and see how it responds. Yeah. Specifically, I want to see in real. I may want to answer questions like, does this system capture all the possible errors that a human being, a human user, in real life context can all possible errors that they could input. 2, does it bring about the improved access to records? So you put it there and then you determine, you find out, does this truly answer the question? So you would in this time use several tools. These are what now we refer to as research tools. You may decide to interview your respondents who are in that particular case study, the 3 different, the 1 school, or if you've decided to use multiple cases, you ask several schools and you interview the users. You find out, how did you feel about this system? Previously, how were you accessing your records? Have you been able to access these records? If no, why not? Then you can also carry out observation. Yeah, you can observe maybe by placing within the system a monitoring tool which determines how many users have tried to access their school records in the time that you've implemented it. You can spend time at the school and observe students as they go to the labs or things like that. You can give them a questionnaire. You can give the students a questionnaire and they find out if they've used it, how do they feel about it. If they have not accessed it, what was their issue? Was it because of network? Did they not have a device? And so on and so forth. So you determine whether it has actually improved access to records. You may have observed even that maybe you put the system, but the administrators don't input the records. So therefore that may stop. That may be an observational factor that you've used, something that you've observed and you report back. So in other words, the case study, if we come back to what the case study is, the case study would be that real life context. Yeah, a real life situation where you want to observe something in real life. Yeah, you want to carry out empirical, you want to find out real answers, the practical answers. Remember the term empirical research, the word empirical, we've met this before. Okay, we've met this term before. So then looking at a phenomena, then you say contemporary. Just go ahead and Google the word contemporary. What does it mean? What does the term contemporary mean? Sometimes I've heard of contemporary art, contemporary issues. Go ahead and Google it. And then try and, so that you can have a better understanding of what the case study is. So the case study would be the real life context. Now, in the example I've given you of studying the system that tracks student records, the case study would be a particular school. So an example would be, let us say, SETA High School. That would be one case study. I would say I want to use this in a secondary school, and one case study would be SETA High School. Maybe another would be Viva College. A third, maybe I would use Namagunga High School. So I would say these are my 3 case studies that I would use. Okay. Another person might say I'll use St. Mary's in Nkozi. Another person would say Chitovu. Is it St. Joseph Chitovu? I can't remember the name properly. You said that would be my other case study. You can have one, remember, you can have one or more case studies, but that case study area must be representative of other case studies. So if you would have designed, let's say, the student tracking system for secondary schools, then you must go to secondary schools. If you designed it for primary schools, then you must use it for primary schools. If you designed it for urban secondary schools, then you'd think about that. If you designed it for rural secondary schools, then you put it there. If you may have designed it for a universal secondary school, universal secondary education type of school, those which are government owned or government led. Or it could be you would have designed it for a private school. So if you've designed the system for any kind of context, then the case study which you have selected, for example, if you had designed the tracking system for a private school, then a school like Seta High would be okay. A school like Viva would be okay. You can use it for any of those. But if you have a universal secondary education type of school, then that system would not be representative. So your case study must be representative of the population you wish to study. Okay, I hope that is clear. If it is not, we can always, anything that you find that is not clear, make sure you post this in the discussion forum or on the WhatsApp group, and next time we meet, I will elaborate on that particular point. So far I have explained what the case study method is. The definition is here. You can also go ahead and Google other definitions of the case study research methods. I'm going to ask you about these articles. I'm going to ask you, I want to find out from you in our discussions, articles you've read about these different research methods and what they say. I would expect you to post these references on the discussion forums. Please go ahead and do that, okay? It's important that you also read further, and then we come back and discuss on areas you haven't understood, okay? Now, case study, we had earlier talked about the fact that our research methods are connected to our research approach. If I can just go back, if I can just remind you on the previous one, we discussed experimental research. Experimental research is a highly quantitative type of research, because as you can see, you're measuring variables. Yeah, if you look at the article we read on hedonic experience, the multitasking, it was very clear that there were variables that they were measuring. The feeling towards something, the person's experience, those were very specific variables which they could measure. That is experimental research is highly quantitative in nature. It looks at numbers, statistical numbers. Now, when we look at case study approach, which is looking at a real life phenomena, and then here we say it's looking at multiple sources of evidence, multiple sources. So multiple sources means I have talked to a respondent, I have observed, or I have somebody's observation, I have looked at documentation. There I'm looking at multiple sources. We see this research is trying to get a wholesome picture about a real life experience, a wholesome picture. And we can see that is very much qualitative in nature, qualitative in nature. Okay, so you may find somebody is trying to research something within one case or multiple cases, but going deep, trying to understand. So case study research is normally qualitative in nature. Okay, so far we have seen what the case study method is. I've understood something. It involves with empirical research, really answer questions. It looks at contemporary phenomena, find out what the word contemporary is within a real life context. So we're examining something within its natural setting, and we're looking at multiple sources. Yeah. So all of these tell us that it's qualitative in nature. Yeah. Qualitative in nature, and we're putting them in a real life experience, maybe in one case or multiple cases, and we give a wholesome picture. Normally, the research questions we have are dealing with things like why, what, how. Why does this happen? What is happening inside this situation? How does this happen? Those are really qualitative questions. You remember with our experimental research method, especially in the multitasking article, the question, what the researchers were dealing with were hypotheses, assumptions, yeah, from theory, assumptions. So that is highly quantitative in nature when you are proving or disproving a hypothesis. Questions like why, what, and how are really dealing with questions that where we don't know, as researchers we don't know, and we want to find out and report back. Okay, we want to find out and report back. So it's highly qualitative in nature. This particular research method is highly qualitative in nature. We come to the third type of research method, grounded theory. Now, most of you will not deal with this kind of research because it deals with theory development. Theory development. So by the time we're looking at theory development, we know this is a qualitative kind of research method. So we are looking at data in its initial format. We're trying to make meaning out of it, observation, and to make a and then generate predictions out of it. Okay? The starting grounded theory is basically the starting of theory generation. It has an inductive approach, meaning we already see that it's qualitative in nature. So this kind of research is basically looking at developing theory. So you start with data collection, and from data collection you begin formulating meaning out of it, which is the initial start of or development of a theoretical framework. We hardly will deal with this type of research method at our level, or even at master's level, even sometimes even at PhD level. We rarely find this type of research. But it's also good to know that there's this kind of method, ground theory. We come to our fourth, ethnography. Okay? Now, many people will most IT people will tell you that, I remember when I talked about when I was doing my research and I said I was going to use ethnography. It was a very strange methodology to use, especially because I was in an ICT department at the university where I was doing my PhD. But imagine doing that in the field of IT. Like I said earlier, the most methods that you'll find in the field of IT are design science and action design research. You will rarely find someone doing ethnography. Why? Ethnography is a method that comes from the field of anthropology. Yeah? Now, many of you might wonder, what is anthropology? Please go ahead and Google it. Don't just depend on me. What is anthropology? You will find this term thrown about, let's say, in the field of development studies. If you went to your colleagues, your friends in the field of development studies or social sciences, the term anthropology comes up a great deal. It's basically the study of human beings in their social settings and in their cultural settings. So people who are normally studying the cultural setup of people and trying to understand why people do the things that they do. I've given you many times as an example the study which was done on female genital mutilation or female circumcision. That type of research is typically anthropology. You're studying human beings within their natural setting and within their cultural setting. You're also putting in the aspect of their cultural setting. Now imagine doing that in ICT. It can be a bit strange. But however, let me say nothing is ever strange. You never know what you're going to study in this world. When you're doing ethnography research, you're trying to interpret something in its natural habitat and to represent all the social settings that surround it. I think an example I can give you for us in ICT where we might use it. We normally study information systems. Now, I'm not saying that in particular this is something you're going to deal with, but we normally study information systems in organizations. Now, the thing most of us don't understand is that organizations also have their social settings. They also have their cultural settings. Look at a context like Uganda Martyrs University. Because it is a Catholic institution, there are certain cultural settings that you will automatically find there. For example, it is not strange to find a crucifix within a classroom at Uganda Martyrs University, no matter what campus you go to. You will not find it strange that at certain point there will be mass celebrated on campus. You will not find it strange to find nuns and priests as part of the staff members. You will not find it strange at all that in certain, that you set on the calendar of the university, days of saints are seen to be so important. For example, 18th of, I think it's 18th of October is extremely important to Uganda Martyrs University. and you'll even find it referred to as the University Day. And that day is very special. There will be mass celebrated. There will be a number of activities. Why is 18th March, 18th of October, sorry, very important? Because that is the day the Uganda Martyrs were canonized. Now, if you went, let's say, to UCU, IU, Makerere University, MOOBS, such a day is not considered important. It's not part and parcel of the culture of the organization, because all those institutions are not Catholic founded. So you find even an organization has a culture. Yeah, it has a culture. If you went to a government a government hospital, a government hospital has a way it's organized. It has a certain structure. It is not uncommon to find, for example, the hospital director uh, being shuffled. Yeah, there are situations where the hospital directors are shuffled between hospitals. The one who is in Masaka today abruptly will be shuffled without warning, will be sent to Kabale. The one of Kabale will be sent to Gulu. You know, things like that, because that is the culture of government. Likewise, if you went to institutions of higher learning which belong to government, for example, the primary teaching colleges, the colleges that train teachers, and those which are attached to government, they also shuffle their principles abruptly, without notice and without explanation. That is the culture of government. It kind of has almost a military aspect to it. So you find also organizations have a culture, and that culture, you never know, may affect how information systems are adopted, how information systems will thrive or not thrive, for that matter. So uh, ethnography, whereas it's very much rooted in the field of social sciences and development studies, it's not uncommon that we may have to use it in the field of IS or Inform or IT, because we as IT people input our systems in a social setting, and we want to see how the world interprets these systems, or how the world will interpret them and will adopt them or not adopt them. Okay. One of the key things about this method of research is that it is time consuming, because you really have to spend time to understand the culture of that institution. You can't go there 1 day, 2 days, and you imagine you'll understand the culture of an institution. You can do that if you're doing experimental research, it's within your lab. You can do that if you're doing case study research. You may spend a week or 2 weeks maximum, but not with ethnography. Ethnography, you really have to spend time. You have to be flexible with your time. You have to, whatever mindset you went with, if you had a schedule, you are going to say, maybe month one, I'm going to spend it with this department, and then you find out, oh no, this department, this time they're budgeting, I can't spend time with them, let me move to this one. Or if you found that you are going to talk to this other person, that person is not in their moods to talk to you, then you have to talk to another person. So you have to be flexible with ethnography, because you really have to spend time with people and understand them in their context. Now, it's quite rare that you'll use this method at undergraduate level, but it's also good to know that this is a method that you can use maybe during your master's or another time when you're doing some research. We come to action research. Now I'm going to share with you an article where an or IT research was done using action research. Now, action research really was rebelling against the idea of researchers not participating in what they were doing, especially in research which is within a case study and which is empirical, practical research that is solving problems. When you read about action research, please go ahead and read about it. And I'm going to ask you some of these things, because there are quite a number of articles that talk about all these different types of research. The researchers, the people who developed this methodology, were really focused on, they really wanted to look at problem solving type of research. Many times research is seen to be abstract, out of this world. It has nothing to do with solving the world's problems. Look at the example of grounded theory. Grounded theory is mostly focused on theory and philosophies and so on and so forth. And someone may imagine things have nothing to do with real life problems. And life has real problems. We want to know. We want to participate in the problem solving issues while actually researching, while bringing about new knowledge. So the people who came up with this type of research said, okay, let us, I have a solution. It can be either an artifact, like in IT, we have a system or an application. We get our participants, we place it in our case study area. Let's say you combine action research and case study. You place it in this area, and then you participate with the respondents. You see them deal with the artifact, and they'll tell you, no, I don't like this thing. Oh, I saw this helps me solve, this one does not. And as you participate, you, the researcher, you're participating, you record what they're telling you, you take back your innovation or solution, refine it, then bring it back. And the whole time you're observing and taking note of the way the participants are behaving with the solution. You observe, you interview, you take note, so on and so forth. Not just responding to the artifact, but maybe how they felt about it, what their environment was like as they were dealing with this thing. Maybe it's a system that you're introducing, and as you're introducing the system, as you're implementing it, you realize there are constant power cuts. Or you realize this participant, the person, the user of the system, as they are dealing with the system, they are also dealing with so many other issues. Maybe it's an administrator who has to deal with your system, but deals with people constantly walking in and out of his or her office. Those are observations you take note of, yeah, and you report them as is. So that's what action research is. There is, first of all, there is action. That's the first part we note, that we have a problem, we design a solution, and as we design the solution, after we design the solution, we put it in a case study, place it in a case study. Let's go back to the example of the student tracking system. We put it in a case study, we put it there for users, for students to use, and we participate with the students as they use the system. So as you participate with them, you realize, oh, many students don't have access to devices, they don't have access to computers, they don't have personal smartphones or tablets or things like that. And then you also maybe observe that there are constant power cuts. They don't have an effective network this is a system that can be accessed. Then as you implement it, you also implement it with the teachers. Then you realize the teachers take their time to input when you're telling the teacher, or you can now put the students' records, but then you realize that 1 month passes, maybe 1 week passes, 2 weeks, the teacher is not inputting. Then you try to find out why, then you realize maybe that the teacher has limited computer literacy skills, and so on and so forth. So that action part, that's the action part. You design, you implement. So the research part is as you observe. Yeah, as you observe, you're picking out the different aspects in the case study, and you're recording them, and you report them later on about their effect to the solution that you have input. Then there's the spiral part. The spiral part means that after you've done the initial, you've observed, you take your solution back, correct it, put it back in the setting. That becomes a cycle, until, of course, this cycle has to end somewhere. It can't be endless, where there's a point where you stop and you report back. Okay. The main thing about action research is that you want change to happen. That was one of the primary issues the researchers in action research, those who developed this methodology, wanted. They wanted change, a real change, that we are not just getting researchers who are coming, designing something, putting there, observe, and then walk away without making any change. They wanted a real change to happen as they carry out their research. Now, this methodology is very popular in the field of education. I know actually in the Faculty of Education, they actually teach this research method specifically because it's a very popular methodology there. It's not very common in ICT, but I'm also going to show you an article where this methodology was used. In particular, if I can just give you a sneak peek on this particular article. This particular article was looking at what we now refer to as groupware software. groupware applications. And applications are normally placed in categories. We have social media applications, we have groupware applications, different types of applications. Now, groupware applications, an example I can give you is WhatsApp. Okay, WhatsApp is one of them, and there are others which happened before. There's Telegram as well. So the groupware software is essentially that application which can bring a group of people together to discuss certain, that it can allow discussions within a group. So in this particular research, a groupware application was implemented in an organization uh, with the motivation behind it that these groupware applications were meant to improve communication and therefore collaboration among management members, and which would therefore improve the performance of management members. So they went ahead and used action research. They implemented it within an organization with the intention of bringing about that improved communication and efficiency. But this research actually failed. Even that's even the title of the article. There is actual failure within the organization. And why is that? It failed because of issues that existed within the organization. So action research from that particular article shows us can also be used in IS research. So far we have seen experimental research, which we said is highly qualitative in nature. We looked at the second was I believe case study research, which was qualitative in nature as well. The first one, experimental was quantitative in nature. Case study is qualitative in nature. Grounded theory is qualitative in nature. Ethnography is qualitative in nature. Then action research is also very qualitative, extremely qualitative in nature. Already you can actually even see from the research, from action research, you actually realize it can only be placed within a case study. It can't be placed, let's say, within a whole country. It has to be within a case study if you're to have active participation of the respondent together with the researcher together with the respondents. Now we come to research methods that are very much tied to IT. So the first one is design science research, and the second one will be action design research. So design science is very much an IS research, and it involves the building of innovative artifacts. And this is where IT, computer science, this is where we lie as researchers. I am going to urge you, take time to read about this research method and understand it. Okay, I have certain articles I will share with, but I'll only share with you after I have seen what you have also researched. Okay, I want you to go out and read some more on this particular research method, design science research. So design science research basically outlines certain steps that a researcher goes through to develop an artifact. And when I go through them, you'll actually see that these are things I normally go through as I'm developing an application or a system or a network solution or whatever. The first step that they refer to is what is referred to as the first hunch. This is when an innovator, a researcher comes up with an idea of an artifact they believe if they can construct. And when they construct this artifact, they usually have a set of goals they have in mind. I want to design this artifact for such and such a reason. I want to design this artifact so that it can produce this. There's a certain set of generic goals that you have in mind. After that, you come up with requirements. Yeah, requirements and assumptions. Basically, you say this artifact should be able to do A, B, C, D. This should be its requirements. It should be used by person X, Y, and Z. This artifact should be used on a computer, on a smartphone, or whatever it is. It should be web-based, or it is desktop-based. It is accessed via the network or no, a single user. You have all these requirements in mind. So this is now you're beginning from the first hunch, you're beginning to give your artifact a body. Yeah. So you're giving it the functions. Yeah. You're determining what the user interface will look like and the contextual requirements, where it is going to exist. If it's a web-based application, am I going to be using Apache? If it's am I going to use Java to build it? Am I going to use PHP, and so on and so forth? So the contextual part essentially is looking at where is it going to exist, how is it going to be accessed, so and so on and so forth. You're basically beginning your design process. You're designing the functional, contextual, and user interfaces. Then we come to the structural specifications or characteristics. Yeah. So you are giving more body to your requirements. You're basically saying this is the platform that it's going to sit on. You're giving the platform, the architectural platform of your system. And once you've done that, you come up with your prototype. Yeah. So this prototype then goes through an evaluation process. And once it's been evaluated and refined, you then go ahead to implement. Now, one of the things about design science, it says that throughout your stages, you are evaluating from your first hunch to requirements to structure specification, you're evaluating. When you come up with your prototype, you evaluate it. When you implement it, you evaluate as well. Then at the end, you report your overall evaluation, which is basically coming back to, does your artifact answer the initial goals you set out to do? Now, if you as we go through this, you recognize IT. Basically, this is what we do in IT research. Now, like all things in life, we have seen things that oppose one another, or things that are developed when researchers sit back and say, oh, this particular method doesn't answer this particular need. Now, we have seen design science. Now, some people within the field of IS, or information systems and IT, came up and said, no, design science is very much a top-down approach. And they were not happy with that. There are people who are not particularly happy when systems are developed in abstract or separate from the context, and then you simply bring them within a context. They feel that you are forcing or you're imposing your design requirements onto users. So as you can see, design science begins with a first hunch. You, the IT designer, you sit back and think of a system and you say, if I build this system, it will help this school, it will help that university, it will help this organization. But it's you thinking about it. So that's basically a top-down approach. And many times people argue that's how systems and artifacts are rejected, because the real users, the people in the context, are not given time to have their input on what they believe should exist, the artifact should look like. So what happened, there were these authors whom you see here outlined, then said that no, for us, we want to come up with a method which has a bottom-up approach. So they combined design science with action research. Okay. Now, if you remember, or I hope I explained action research well, action research looks at participation, where the researcher is participating together with the respondents or the people in the case study. So they said, let us combine these two research types. Where you're solving an immediate problem within a situation, you participate with the researchers to design a solution, and you place it in the context, observe the way people behave, and then come back and report. Yeah. You come back and report. I would urge you specifically to look at these writers, Sine. Those are the people who really came out and talked about action design research. So this one combines action research together with design science. So it's referred to as action design research. Now, we all remember the onion, the research onion, that we looked at. You remember we looked at the methodologies. These are the ones we've basically been looking at. The only one we haven't seen is survey. We're going to see the survey research method, but we want to look at this inner circle, which talked about the timeline. In what time are you doing your research? So here we want to look at the cross-sectional and longitudinal studies. Whatever method you're using, whether it is we haven't looked at survey, we're going to look at the survey research type. Whether you're doing case study or so on, whatever it is, you have a time horizon you want to study. There are some things that need for you to have a longitudinal study. So take an example for looking at evolution, then we really have to have a longitudinal study. Not so. We are saying that we want to see how people were 300 years ago as opposed to now. That is a really longitudinal study, and you would probably, that kind of study, the researcher, the person who initiated the research is not the one going to report those studies. That person would have died. But most likely they put up a mechanism to collect data to see the way people evolve. That is one. But longitudinal studies also don't have to be that long. We can, for example, someone can study the way society has responded to COVID from 2019 to now 2022. It's possible to collect that data. Yeah, it's not really long ago. That is a type of a longitudinal study. Then we have what we have cross-sectional research. This is what most of us do, which takes a snapshot. Yeah, it takes a snapshot. I'm doing a study within this particular time, and I report that I've observed this phenomena, a particular phenomena within this time period. So I will also report back and say maybe my results, I cannot relate them to a study done. If I collected my data in 2016, I can't relate them to 2019 because situations have changed. So in that time, you report what you have observed within a particular time. So that is cross-sectional research and longitudinal research. That's how they differ. Now, coming back to the generic types, our research strategies can be explanatory, descriptive, or explorative. Yeah. When our study is trying to be exploratory, yeah, our study can be exploratory in the sense that we want to clarify or understand something. We have little or no understanding about something, and we want to conduct a research to understand, to explore. Now, this type of research is normally qualitative in nature. So here you may have something like a focus group discussion. You may have interviews. Yeah. So your research, maybe you're doing something in IT. It could be something in IT, you're developing a solution for a context which has never had a system, and you're going to place it in and see how it behaves. And then you say that's going to be exploratory. So you will have a qualitative approach. Therefore, the tools you pick will really be qualitative in nature, like focus group discussions, where you get a group of people and you discuss. You'll have send general questions and you discuss in detail. And you don't stick to the questions necessarily on your interview questionnaire. You may be flexible because new things may come out. Remember, it's exploratory. When you're exploring something new will come out which you didn't know that existed. So you adopt yourself to even change your questions. Then you can also have interviews. So that is research that is exploratory in nature. So whether you're using you may decide I'm doing a design science research in a case study, but because my research, I'm developing a system for an area which has never had a system, it's going to be exploratory in nature. Okay? Then you might say my research is going to be descriptive. Now, when you look at the three kinds, exploratory, descriptive, and explanatory, they have different degrees. When it's exploratory, we have little or no knowledge about something. So we want to understand about a phenomena. So descriptive in nature is that you want to provide a picture, an accurate profile of something. Something we know something about, but we want to give a more accurate description of something. So, for example, we may have heard that now some people have reported on how e-learning is doing in Uganda, but we want to give a more accurate picture. Now, after COVID, we've had the economy is opened now, but universities are still continuing with e-learning. Some researcher might say, I want to provide a more accurate picture of how users are experiencing with online classes. So you give that accurate picture. The last one is your research may be explanatory. Again, depending whatever research methodology you're using. Here you want to explain the relationship between variables. So when you see terms like explain relationship between variables, we know we are now going quantitative in nature. Okay? If you look at the multitasking article, that was quantitative in nature. It was explaining the relationship between variables. So in other words, here we have an accurate picture of a phenomena, but we actually want to determine the relationship, the causal relationship between variables. Do we have a negative relationship or a positive relationship between variables? For example, we may ask a question in terms of performance, the relationship between performance and online learning. Okay, the relationship between cognitive abilities and online learning, the relationship between problem solving skills and online learning. What is the causal relationship? Is it positive or negative? Do we have a situation where a student develops better problem solving skills because of online learning, or does it worsen? Does it improve cognitive skills, and so on and so forth? Now, in that case, you're going explanatory or quantitative in nature. I hope so far we are together. We come to our final research method, which we rarely use in IT, but it's also good to see it because you never know you will use it. This is the survey method. This is where we are collecting large quantities of data. Yeah, an organization that I can tell you does this very well is Uganda Bureau of Statistics, because they normally collect periodically information on the Ugandan population, on anything. If you go to UBOS, they have information on practically anything. Our number of schools we have, how many are urban, how many are rural, and healthcare facilities, how many are urban, how many are rural. They look at literacy levels. They even look at mobile penetration, mobile phone penetration, how far the mobile phone device has gone in rural areas, how many mobile phones we find in a household in rural areas as opposed to urban, what type of phones are there. They really have detailed information on the Ugandan population. So a survey type of research is when you're collecting large amounts of data on a huge population. Yeah, a huge population. And in this case, we normally find researchers using questionnaires. And when I say huge populations, I mean really huge. Imagine what Uganda Bureau of Statistics would collect from. Those would be like most likely over 200 respondents, or even more for that matter. So it's really huge amounts. And that when we're saying we're using questionnaires, because questionnaires are the easiest to fill out. So that is when you have large groups you're collecting data from, then a questionnaire is the best method. And this is very different from ethnography, where you would use a focus group discussion. So you can imagine a focus group discussion may take maybe a whole day, sometimes 2 days. You may have more than one group discussion with a group, and that may be stretched over a period of a month or 2 months. Imagine observing a community that may take you a whole year, for example. So questionnaires allow you to collect large amounts of data from a huge size of population within a limited period of time. So as you can already tell, this is quantitative in nature. We shall rarely find ourselves using using the survey method, although we can use questionnaires. Yeah, take that difference. A questionnaire is a research tool, it's not a research method. So it's a research tool you can use even if your research is qualitative in nature. Okay, where you say, if it's qualitative in nature, I'm going to use focus group discussions, I'm going to use interviews, I'm going to observe, I'm going to review documents, and I will also use a questionnaire so that I get from all sources of information. A survey, on the other hand, may decide to only use questionnaires only, and that's it. Yeah, that's it. On the other hand, you may also use structured interviews. Now, you notice we haven't used the word structured interviews before. We have used the term interviews, but not structured. So structured interviews, you would say you'd have specific questions which you have set out, and you don't deviate from those questions to your respondents. You don't deviate at all. Now, this is very different from a qualitative type of interview where you may deviate depending on how you respond, the responses from your respondent. Remember, with qualitative research, we are exploring an area which has little or no knowledge. So when you're doing maybe exploratory or descriptive research, you may have an interview questionnaire, you have your set out questions, but as you question your respondent or respondents, certain issues that you hadn't thought about come up, so you will deviate from your interview guide. The structured interview, on the other hand, you don't deviate from it because you're questioning many people, okay? And specifically, if it's a survey, that what we're looking at is relationship between variables, two variables, okay? Two or more variables. So it's very controlled, like for example, in experimental laboratory research, you have this one or more variables and you want to determine relationships. Things that may come out during the process will interfere with your research. So normally you push them out. Yeah. This is opposed to qualitative research where you bring everything because you want to create a holistic picture. Okay. Now, I hope with those research methods, I've given you some tools to think about, and we can discuss them in detail on Moodle, and also we can discuss them in detail with your assignment that I'm posting up on Moodle. Okay. So I am giving you 3 articles. Yeah, 3 articles. The first one is in 1999, and the 2 remaining are quite recent. I want you to put yourselves, I want you to, I know you must already have groups. So the first thing I want to ask is, before even you do this assignment, is to pass on to me your groups so that I input them in Moodle. But work in your groups. Select one article. In that article, identify what the research problem is. What other research has been done regarding the problem that this particular article highlights. Yeah, we know how to identify a research problem. We did that with the multitasking article. So try and identify a research problem. What gap do they identify from the research as the others have done? What was the gap they identified? How did they resolve or tackle that research problem? What were their results? What research method did they use? And what research tools did they use? Then submit a PDF report on Moodle, and as well as a presentation which you're going to present on, I believe it is this will be on the 14th of June. Let me just move. Well, you'll present it when next we meet. This particular tomorrow we are not meeting. That is on the 31st. That will be first. We shall not be meeting this Wednesday, but we shall meet the next Wednesday in June. So that's when you will present your findings as a group. So I thank you for listening to me. Sorry, we shall be meeting on the 18th of June. Apologies for that. 18th or 14th, I'm not sure. But that's when we shall meet, and you'll present these findings to me. So I thank you for listening, and I hope we shall meet both online and offline. We can meet on WhatsApp, we can meet in Moodle, you can call me for any questions, and I hope it will be a fruitful deliberation. Thank you.